Hey everybody, Dan here. It's been a while since I've done a little update. I wanted to do an update on my Solera. I am experimenting with a different kind of process doing a Solera. So in case you don't know what a Solera is, I'm going to link an article by Ed Coffey on Homebrew Talk that talks about basically what a Solera is and how you can start one. I'm doing a little bit of a different take on it though. The problem that I have with doing a Solera is that I have a small fermenter. So it's a 6-gallon fermenter. So every 6 months I get 2 gallons of beer out of my Solera fermenter. And that's not a whole lot of beer. I mean, if it was a 60-gallon barrel, like what Travis Colorado Fly Fisherman has, then I would be getting like 15 gallons, 20 gallons maybe, every 6 to 12 months. And that's a lot of beer. But, you know, unfortunately, the 2 gallons just wasn't a lot to show for. So I'm trying to come up with a method where I'm basically turning 2 gallons of beer into 10 to 12 gallons of sour beer. Alright, so let me show you the process. So here is my sour Solera along with another fermenter and a 1-gallon jug. I'll sanitize with Star San. And here I'm just racking 1 gallon of the sour beer out of the Solera into one of the 1-gallon jug glass fermenters. In addition to the 1-gallon jug, I also racked a gallon into my empty fermenter. So you can see I've got 1 gallon set aside and 1 gallon set in my fresh fermenter. While racking, I took the chance to go ahead and sample the sour beer, see how it was tasting straight out of the fermenter, and tasting really nice and fruity, not too much ethyl acetate or acetic acid. Here I'm racking a half gallon of another Saison that I did with the Yeast Bay Wallonian yeast, and finished with the Brussels Brett blend, which is a really funky blend. I wanted to get a little bit more funk into my sour beer, so I'm racking a half a gallon in there just to get the microbes from the Brussels Brett blend going. And you can see that Saison there. It's got a really dirty pellicle on it. So now that the 2 gallons have been removed from my sour Solera, I am refilling that Solera with 2 gallons of fresh wort. And you can see I'm just racking that wort directly into the sour Solera fermenter. This is an extract wort. I'm probably going to be switching it to all grain this summer. After that was filled up, then I took the second fermenter that I racked the 1 gallon of the sour Solera beer in and the half gallon of the Wallonian Yeast Bay and Brussels Brett blend beer into, and just filled up the rest of that fermenter with the rest of the wort that I boiled up. Again, just an extract wort, but I'll probably be switching this or converting it over to all grain the next time I do this. I did put a 1 ounce of hops into the boil for this batch, and after 4 days I only got the pH down to 3.87. If you can see that, it's a little bit dark, sorry about that, but that's 3.87 pH, which is on the lightly tart side on the palate. So it didn't quite get very sour, and I attribute that probably to the ounce of hops that I used. Even though I only boiled for about 5 minutes, those hops seem to have inhibited my bacteria in my house culture. So after 4 days of sitting on the 1 gallon of sour beer and a half gallon of Brett beer, I went ahead and added USO5 rehydrated with GoFirm. I find that the USO5 Safale ferments pretty well in the low pH environment. After that fermented out, I brewed up another batch of extract wort to add on top of the second 1 gallon that I pulled out of the Solera. One thing to note here is that I just heat pasteurized this dry malt extract. I did not boil it. I also did not add any hops. So I left it about 170 for 10 minutes to heat pasteurize. After brewing up the dry malt extract, I just poured the 1 gallon, the second 1 gallon that I pulled out of the sour Solera into that wort, and just inoculating this beer with that 1 gallon, just like I did the previous batch. The main difference being that this batch did not have any hops in it, and I only heat pasteurized instead of bringing it to a boil. Now this version without the hops got down to 3.64 in only 4 days. And I went ahead and pitched the yeast soon after I took this pH reading. So right now both of the beers are aging. I put oak in them, a couple of oak spirals in there. I'm not expecting the first beer to get a whole lot more sour. and the second beer to be maybe a little bit more sour. I might blend the two together, not exactly sure. I did get some Michigan cherries, sour cherries to put in at least one part of the batch. So we'll see how they turn out. My theory on this is that you can basically take a small amount of beer from your Solera and use that as a starter and a blend at the same time in new wort, and let that go for about 3 or 4 days, and then pitch some Saccharomyces to finish out the fermentation. And this is basically the method that I used to create my Solera in the first place a couple of years ago, and that beer turned out really well. So I think this is a really good way for people who don't have the space for an entire barrel to get more beer out of their sour Solera. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the New Belgium process after reading American Sour Beers by Michael Tonsmeyer. Basically what they do is they have these huge foeders, which are fermenters, oak fermenters, and they take most of their beer out and then fill it with fresh beer. And one interesting to note in the book is that they said that they noticed the more sour beer they left behind, the faster the new fill would sour up, which makes sense because they have more microbes in there. Now the way that I'm doing it, I get a little bit of on average maybe a little bit of an older beer that's pulled, since I'm only pulling 2 gallons out of my sour Solera, and it's a smaller portion that's being blended into the new wort, but I'm still getting a lot of flavor from that old beer. It doesn't seem to take a whole lot to get some of the really nice Brettanomyces flavors that you only get over time. So this is a really interesting method, I believe. It does take a little bit longer. I think about maybe 4 or 5 months in, I might go ahead and bottle it. That's the way I did it with my Solera originally. So it doesn't really take that long once you get the pull and blend it with new wort. You only have to wait maybe about 3 or 4 months. Just gotta wait for all of the sugars to be fermented. So stay tuned, and I'll do a tasting of both the beers, let you know if I blend them or what I do with them, and that might be a couple of months down the line, but in the meantime, cheers, and thanks for watching.